Back with another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Thank you for joining us as always. Jeffri Chadiha from the National Football, NFL.com, and of course the NFL Network. Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, Soren Petro, Sports Radio 810 WHB, as we talk quarterbacks in this edition of the program. We're going to talk about who are the 5 best values for the quarterback position. We have Trevor Lawrence checking in at $275 million, the latest to get paid. So we said, okay, let's break it down based upon who are the top values. We're going to rank them from 1 to 5. We do that right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
All right, thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Back at it here with another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. And this time, we thought we would take the Lawrence contract. It's been a big one. And say, okay, what are the best values for quarterbacks that are out there? When you dug in to the contracts, we always like to kind of preview what we're going to talk about. What did you think you were going to see? And what did you end up finding out, Jeff? What did you learn?
Well, I had the first set of criteria here. So just so you know, I went off average annual salary. And so I don't want to get too deep into the weeds with guaranteed money and length of contract and everything else that goes into these things. I just wanted to make it a real simple thing to be able to compare, what these guys are and what I think their value ultimately is. So for me, it was, there's going to be some guys on there with big contracts, but ultimately it was more about, do I want this guy playing quarterback for me in a huge moment with the championship on the line?
Okay. Sam, what would you learn? What did you take away from this?
There's a lot of bad contracts out there.
Really? I mean, me too. That was one of my things. Like, my God, there's a lot of ways to attack this one and try to figure it out. But like, there are a lot of guys making a lot of money, and I think that was kind of the purpose and the thought that at least I had when we talked about this topic was like, I don't know that teams get it on what they're doing here. Like, this is not the right way to go about, just taking good quarterbacks and paying them at the top of the food chain. I don't understand why it's happening. And it's because it happens at every other position. But when you're paying this position twice as much as you pay any other one, you can't operate that way, yet teams still are. That's the thing is, like, I think if a team owner or somebody close to a team owner would look at some of these things, don't you think that they would have the same reaction that we didn't go to say to themselves, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, so the Lawrence deal isn't quite what it seems on the face of it because it's not really guaranteed after 27. That's when the big money is. But when you get the quarterbacks that are in like that 10 to 12 range and you feel like you have to pay him because you got to have a guy, like, it's almost better off not to have that guy if you're going to have to pay him at the very, very top of the food chain, in which case, like, I know quarterback trades don't happen all that often, but there's a reason that all of us were discussing at length last year for valid reason whether or not the Chiefs should trade Chris Jones, because he's a very valuable commodity entering the last year of his deal. And I wonder if that could potentially become a thing. As I looked at this list over the past, couple days, was wondering, are we going to see a time where somebody's got a quarterback in that 10 to 12 range, that 8 to 12 range, and decides, you know what? I think we might be better off collecting some assets for this guy.
I listen.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think it's coming. I think you're about to say what I'm saying. I think it's coming faster than you realize, because when you start talking about Trevor Lawrence, you start talking about Tua, you start talking about Dak, and you're an organization that already knows, do I really believe in this guy? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, again, I have nothing against Trevor Lawrence, but I look at what he's done. It's hard to justify at this stage of his career saying, okay, you need to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, or you need to be a $50 million a year quarterback. Because everybody else on this list has either won an MVP or played in the Super Bowl. Like, you haven't done either one. So how do you warrant being on this list?
But there's no in between. I mean, there's no in between the highest. I mean, if you're going to re-sign Trevor Lawrence, it's going to be at the top of the market. And that's what the quarterback market's become. And that's what became evidence we're going through this exercise.
Yeah, I wonder what the 49ers would have done with Trevor Lawrence, because they are the one team. They've been to 2 Super Bowls with 2 different quarterbacks, both of them on the lower end of the cost spectrum. I know Jimmy Garoppolo was into a second contract, but he wasn't being paid like one of the top guys. They've kind of shown you the blueprint. I think they would love to get Patrick Mahomes, and they would love to pay Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes has proven that you win with great quarterbacks. But I think if you don't have the great quarterback, keep your head on a swivel and keep looking. They kept firing with Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. Trey Lance didn't work. They quickly moved on, went to Brock Purdy. But now they've got a cheap quarterback, and that enables them to have a really talented roster. It got thinner. It's going to be thinner this year. They've lost their depth because those contracts keep going up. But they're able to keep a lot of that talent because Brock Purdy's there and is cheap. And I wonder if we won't see teams start recognizing this and start flipping the quarterback more, right?
Well, teams have realized, and I've had these discussions already with general managers, that this is not a 10-year cycle league anymore. Yet the Chiefs are fortunate they have Mahomes, and you can lock him in for 10 years and say he's going to be our guy. But most teams look at it like, we got 2 to 3 years to make it work, or we're all getting fired. So let's make sure we're spending money the right way. Let's make sure we're not, with what the Bears did with Justin Fields. They could have easily gone down that road and say, let's see where he's at, done what they did with Trevor Lawrence, and paid him some money. But they were like, they already knew in year 2, let's take the guy. So let's start looking for the next guy. Let's start building it up, and let's be ready when that guy comes around. So I think you're going to see more of that moving forward.
Yeah, we nailed on the effect of this is what we're talking about today. But Jeff just hit on the cause of it, which is it's people fearing for their jobs and having to not being able to feel like they have the confidence that ownership is going to have the confidence to them to see through the patience. Because what we're talking about is a route of patience, and that's not what the NFL is.
No, I think that's a great point. By the way, if you're looking for a great contractor to handle your parking lot issues, Gann Asphalt and Concrete is the one. One contractor, all things parking lot, with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safe. Helps you and your business. Focus on business. No unnecessary delays. Make sure you leave a good first and last impression with clients, with customers, with a smooth parking lot, whether it's striping it, concrete bumpers, signage, or building an entirely new lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete has you covered. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, like I said, one contractor, all things parking lot. We got our top 5. We're going to go 1 to 5 again, right? We've decided that is our best bet on how we want to do it is 1 to 5.
Yep.
Okay. Jeff, I always like it when you start because it takes all the pressure off me. You're going to upset somebody early on in the equation, so then I can just jump in there afterwards. So why don't you lead us on?
Well, I won't upset anybody on this podcast because number 1 is Patrick Mahomes.
Okay.
Best deal.
Wow. Did you hear that, Gallery?
Best deal football. And still a bargain. He'd be a bargain at any price. That's the reality when you have the best player in the game and he's on your team and he's done everything you wouldn't want. He's been selfless in a lot of ways contractually. He hasn't had the issues that you've seen Lamar Jackson have in Baltimore, or Dak Prescott have in Dallas. It's for him. He understands the key thing for him is the money's always going to come as long as he's winning, and the only way he's going to keep winning is by having a good supporting cast around him. And so that is, to me, it's he signed a deal that wasn't good for him a few years ago, but I don't think he's ever cared about that. And for me, that easily makes you the best bargain in football. He's done everything they've asked and more. And I don't know what else you can say about the guy.
Yeah. I've got him number one as well, Sam. I don't know if you do, but
yeah,
he's tops on my list. 450 million, 45 million per. They've tweaked that contract. Some of the numbers that are out there, I think, are old off when they redid that contract on where it's at. But I really don't care. I think he's the one guy. He's the highest, percentage of the cap to ever win the Super Bowl, and the two highest. He's done it in back-to-back years. And listen, I can't stress enough the importance of being able to throw the ball when the other team knows you got to throw the ball. 2-minute drills are the key. There's so few possessions in the NFL now. When you get a short one, it can't be like, well, we only had 151. You still got to go get points. And nobody does it better than this guy does. He does it playing hurt. He does it with Hall of Fame wide receivers. He does it with not Hall of Fame wide receivers. Patrick Mahomes is worth every penny and then some. I remember, I'll go back, and I've quoted this before, but I'll say it again. Eric Eager, our buddy, said back in, I think, 2018, I said, what is Patrick Mahomes worth in today's cap dollars? I think we were like 160 on the cap or something back then. He said he's worth $80 million. And I think he is. I think that's to bring everybody down and balance it out. If one team has Patrick Mahomes, you need to pay him $80 million to suck up back then. Now you need to pay him even more to suck up the amount of cap room he needs to take up to dumb down the rest of your team. Patrick Mahomes is tops on my list as well, but it gets wacky after that. I'm going to tell you this.
It's like Tom Brady in our previous podcast. It's pretty easy to figure out.
It's wackier.
I would kind of be surprised if we didn't have the same number two, but I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the one guy in the entire league, that he's just completely untradeable in the sense that
number one for you?
Yes. No matter what the other team offered you, current contract, whatever it was, there's no chance. Like if you said, what would it take to pry away Patrick Mahomes? How many first-round picks? The answer is doesn't matter. Everyone else on this list, I think there is an answer, even if that answer is unrealistic. There's no realistic answer for Patrick Mahomes. If he was barely the highest paid guy, should still have him number one on our list. He's not the highest paid guy. Now, last September's restructure of his deal did climb him up the ladder more than some of these like OTC and Spotrac websites would have you believe. Like his number after next year jumps pretty good. And this contract is more guaranteed than people realize it is. It's not quite as team friendly. It's more player friendly than people give it credit for. But anything Patrick Mahomes signs, it's in the neighborhood of any other player in the league, is always going to be team friendly. And this number one was a slam dunk. Like I said, I think we should all have the same two, but number one is just a complete slam dunk.
There's no way that an NFL person shows their ass more than when they start quoting guaranteed money and they leave Patrick Mahomes' number back at like, $100 million, right? Because it is a rolling 2-year guarantee constantly. 2 years. As soon as the league year's over, the next year and the year after are guaranteed.
March, yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, with the new league year, he's got that next upcoming season and the year after that. So, in other words, every dollar that he's getting paid was guaranteed for 2 years before he ever got it. So, he's going to get another $100 million now. It'll be $120 million when those raises come in. And so, I do agree with you. The contract information that's out there is way behind on what reality is, but I don't care. He's that good.
Yes.
And he's worth every penny of it. And he's the only guy that has done it. He's done it while being expensive and winning championships. I think it's tough. I think it gets tough to put other expensive people on here. Let me ask you this before we go to number two, since we all had Patrick Mahomes. Did you start going another direction here? Because I went a real different direction here. I don't think Jeff did. I think let me predict Jeff's. Josh Allen's coming up soon. Joe Burrow's coming up soon, and Lamar Jackson's coming up soon.
Well, you're almost there.
Okay,
you're close.
Mine's going to look different. Yeah. Mine's going to look different. So who you got? Who you got next, Jeff?
Joe Burrow.
Okay.
checking in at $55 million a year average annual salary, which is $10 million more than Mahomes, and I think the same as Lawrence, right? Is he the highest paid?
Burrow.
For average annual salary.
Yes.
He and Lawrence are
Yes.
both tied, right?
Yes, they're at 55. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's why I would take Joe Burrow. He's the only guy who scares the Chiefs on this list in this league. And he's a badass. And he has beaten Mahomes 3 out of the 4 games he started against him. And if Patrick Mahomes could be my quarterback, he'd be the first guy I would take because he is. And I think, when Eric was doing this podcast, he would kind of ding him and say, well, he's not as good when he's hurt as Mahomes or he's not as athletic. Joe Burrow is an assassin, and he's proven that. And he took a team that was awful and turned it into a Super Bowl team, an AFC champion team, within 2 years of starting. And if he wasn't hurt last year, I guarantee you they probably would have played the Chiefs for a third straight time in the AFC championship game. When you come to Arrowhead and you beat Patrick Mahomes in his own place with a team that nobody saw coming, a team that was a bunch of free agents and some young guys. I've been in that Bengals locker room. They did not believe they could win games until he showed up. Every game they play now, they believe they can win when Joe Burrow is starting. That's what you pay for.
Can I just say that this is a giant year for Joe Burrow? I mean, a giant year because he's 29, 22, and 1 overall. If he doesn't,
2 major injuries last year.
2 major injuries. If the Chiefs don't melt down at halftime of that AFC Championship game, which you're a defense guy, I don't know why you're not thinking Joe Burrow and saying it's the Bengals defense that won that game, not really Joe Burrow.
But they believe they could win because he was on their sideline.
And listen, I think there's a guy out there who had a bunch of tweets and was bringing up like the Joe Burrow, character or career assassination case. And he did a really good job, right? I mean, he talked about how like the come from behind wins are really their defense getting it done. He really doesn't have come from behind wins. Like he tore him up pretty good. I'm with you. I think Joe Burrow's better than that. He pointed out he goes against the Rams. He needed a field goal. He couldn't get a field goal in the Super Bowl, right? And he does take a lot of sacks. I think that's a problem. He needs to get rid of it. I think their offensive line needs to be better, but they've poured money, and certainly they've got to have the heaviest offensive line of all time if they're going to roll out all 3 of those 400-pound guys this year. No more excuses. I think it's a big year for Joe Burrow to justify the contract.
Excuses for he took over the Super Bowl in year 2.
And you're right. And he's 29, 22, and 1. I mean, he went 5-5 last year. He's had 2 major injuries. Had another one. Didn't he have one more in college too? Wasn't that his second ACL?
No.
Look. In college. I think Joe Burrow needs to have a big year, or people are going to be talking about. He's going to lose. It looks like he's going to lose T. Higgins.
Yeah.
They did lose Tyler Boyd. Let's see what he does when that receiver core turns over. I just think
you don't think he's the second best quarterback in the league.
But that's different. He's the highest paid.
What I'm saying.
I also think his contract situation is just.
I don't.
I don't think he's the second best quarterback in the league either. But I think he's third. So I mean that's splitting hairs. But
you have Josh Allen second as far as the second best.
Yes,
I do too. But I will tell you, if he's healthy, I'm not so sure that Matt Stafford isn't better too. I think Matt Stafford plays at a really high level. So
he does. But I'm going off. I'm saying to be the man, you got to beat the man, and he
did not beat Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford beat
him. I will say you can't.
Aaron Donald beat him.
You can't quote Joe Burrow's record and then throw in Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford's got a career losing record.
You can't. Well, I will tell you this: you can't quote Aaron Donald as beating Joe Burrow, and then tell me that Joe Burrow beat the Chiefs, because the Chiefs didn't score in the second half. The Bengals defense beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game.
How'd they score touchdowns then?
You can't have it both ways.
Were they returning fumbles for touchdowns or interceptions?
How many touchdowns did Aaron Donald score? How many touchdowns?
He had the big stop. He had the big stop at the end of the game. They were going down the field.
The big stop.
Had the ball at the end.
Bengals defense didn't have a big stop. They didn't double cover Tyreek Hill and take him out in overtime. They didn't completely shut him out in the second half.
They still had to go down the field and score points. Just because they took the ball away doesn't mean they were going to get points out of it. We saw that in this year's Super Bowl. The Niners took the ball away, didn't get points out of it.
I don't know. I see a gate swinging both ways there. But okay, listen. I think Joe Burrow
3-1 against the Chiefs. Joe Burrow. That's what I'm going off of.
And I think listen. And I don't have a major issue with Joe Burrow, but I just think if they come out and go 9-8 this year, we're going to view Joe Burrow real different. Can we agree with that?
They've won the AFC North twice before he got hurt. They're not going 9-8.
If they go,
I guarantee they're a 12-win team.
If he goes 8-9, you guaranteeing a
12-win team.
Okay, I won't because I can't guarantee he'll play 12 games. But you're telling me if they come out and go 8-9, you're not going to look differently at him.
If he starts 17 games, they're winning 12 of them.
Okay, all right, bold statement. I like it. Now, where was that bold statement? Bold and daring. All right. So number 2 on your list, Sam.
I've got for value. For current contract, I've got C.J.Stroud number 2.
Okay.
And frankly, I thought we'd all have a number 2 because the biggest gap between where all of us would rank a quarterback, like just regardless of contract versus where his contract ranks, the biggest gap is C.J.Stroud. I think he's a top 10 quarterback right now. I think he's in that 8 to 10 range right now. He's 26th in compensation. And so, I mean, look, there's a major question about C.J.Stroud, which is he had the Mahomes lead the league in average depth of target season that Mahomes had his first year as a starter. Defense is adjusted to Patrick Mahomes. They're going to adjust to C.J.Stroud. The question is going to be whether or not he can adjust back. But I will say he also, despite that, leading the league in average depth of target, he had the lowest turnover percentage on those 20-plus yard throws. Like, this was not a quarterback that was just throwing the ball up for grabs and even though he did have good receivers, it was not just a product of those good receivers. Like, it was a quarterback that was making plays. And I'm just saying, for his money that he's making, you can win with that quarterback on a rookie contract.
Yeah, I have absolutely no problem with that. None whatsoever. Because I've got him on my list. C.J. Stroud is on my list. I don't have him at number 2. So do you want where I have Stroud or do you want my number 2?
No, go with number 2. Let's see who you got.
Number 2, I have Brock Purdy. He is making less than $1 million per year. I think he is probably 10th, 8th, somewhere in that range. He came back against the Detroit Lions. He was down. Lions had that game in the bag. Everyone wants to say the Lions blew it. I think part of the reason they want to say that is because they don't want to give credit to Brock Purdy. But Brock Purdy made the plays, and he's making nothing. So the purpose of the exercise is the best value. And I think he, is a quality quarterback. I think he is, Joe Flacco's best days. He's won playoff games. I don't know what else you got to ask.
Joe Flacco?
On his best days, like when Joe Flacco would win a road playoff game every year early in his career for the Baltimore Ravens. Not Joe Flacco now. Joe Flacco in his prime. I think he's at least that good. Yeah. Right.
Jason Bean from Kansas makes more money than Brock Purdy.
Yeah. I'll buy that.
Undrafted free agent quarterback, possibly receivers, making more money than Brock Purdy.
Wow. Yep. I think I think Brock Purdy is an absolute stud. So,
did you think that way last year?
Was I what?
Were you on his bandwagon last year, or you were transferred?
I'm not on his bandwagon that he's like going to topple Patrick Mahomes. I think calling him the next Tom Brady is unfair. I think he's very good. I mean, what's not to like about what Brock Purdy did last year?
I agree with you.
Listen, Brock Purdy in 2 years, 5-0 and 12-4. He's 17-4 overall. He has completed 69% of his passes, thrown 44 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. Had the highest touchdown interception last year. Had the highest yards per attempt at 9.6.
Best in the league against the blitz last year.
Best passer rating, best quarterback, best QBR rating. I mean, he was absolutely fantastic. Now, is his offense loaded? Yes, at the skill position, it's absolutely loaded. And those numbers are not – he's not going to lead the league in all those numbers every year. Is his offensive line loaded? He's got a great left tackle when he plays.
No.
The rest of the offensive line is just okay. So it wasn't like he was, sitting behind perfection. And I'm kind of surprised the Niners didn't do more to upgrade the offensive line to give him even more time. Fix the offensive line, let one of the wideouts go, trade one of the wideouts, and try to maintain as much of the defense as you could. I think it would have been a smart move for the 49ers. But, I think Brock Purdy, he went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, right? He almost beat Patrick Mahomes. So if his head coach knew the overtime rules, maybe he would have beaten Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So, Brock Purdy, one of the lowest paid guys in all of football, yes. I think you could have made a case for Brock Purdy being number one on this list.
No.
Yeah. By the way, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Besame Wellness. You can save 25% on your order if you use the promo code podcast25. That's right. Save 25% when you use the promo code podcast25 at Besame Wellness.
Besame Wellness, online or curbside. Shop daily at Besame Wellness for all your cannabis needs. Open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 9, Sundays, 10 to 6. Locations in North Kansas City, Liberty, Smithville on Berry Road, and in Warrensburg. Even delivery for medical marijuana. Getting your cannabis has never been easier. We at Besame Wellness strive to make your life as easy as possible and cannabis as accessible as possible.
All right. So where do we go now? Who's up next? I'm over my skis. Tommy listens to this.
Yeah. I know we're on 3, right?
Yeah.
We're down to 3. Yes.
Have you gone 2? All right, Sam? You done your 2?
Yeah, it's C.J.Stroud. Second.
Yeah. I've got Stroud 3. And all the things Sam said are legit. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's on an average salary per year of $9 million. I love what they've done in the offseason with him in terms of putting more people around him with Joe Mixon and Stephon Diggs coming in, paying Nico Collins, improving the defense with Danielle Hunter. I think he's set up for the kind of run that Mahomes has had and maybe Caleb Williams as well is in that position too. But as far as a young quarterback, I watched him at Ohio State. I thought he was really good. He's special now. And I don't know if I just didn't see it or he just had tough games against Michigan when he was playing those big moments. But you watch him now, and the scouts I talk to all talk about just it's really the poise. It's the poise. It's the comfort with being uncomfortable. It's the comeback. It's these things that you don't see in Tua, you don't see in Dak, you don't see in Trevor Lawrence, you see in him in spades. And I think when you got a guy who's that young, making that kind of money, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I almost went with Purdy above him. I think he's a better player than Brock Purdy. That's the only reason he's sitting at 3, but I think he's going to be special.
Yeah. C.J. Stroud is at number 3 on mine, and it was a tough call on whether or not I was going to put him number 2. I love the kid. Was it against Clemson where he almost brought him back, or was it against Georgia?
Georgia. It was Georgia.
Against Georgia. He stood in against the rush, and that was the time where I went, oh, wait a minute.
No.
Maybe this guy just isn't one of these other Ohio State system quarterbacks.
No.
The game he had there, and I was like, well, did he just get lucky? I can't say I was beating the drum louder than everybody for C.J. Stroud. I can't say that I was all about Stroud over Young. I did say I wouldn't take Young 1 because of his size, and so I'd probably fall on Stroud. So I'm not going to try to give you a revisionist history about how much I love C.J. Stroud. I love Patrick Mahomes when he was coming out. That's people heard me beat his drum all year, but I didn't do that for C.J. Stroud, but I'll do it now. I mean, what he did, one of the things that I think is clear, sack avoidance is also toughness, the ability to stand in and deliver the ball. And he's badass, man. He is tough and delivers the ball with a guy bearing down on him. And a lot of guys can't do that. A lot of guys, it's just the turtle and kind of throw it out someplace. He dropped like that throw against, I can't remember, was it against the Colts to send him into the playoffs, or was it in the first playoff game? But he made one throw where he just had a guy over him. I don't know how he made it. And it was, I don't know that I've seen Patrick Mahomes make one of those throws. Let me be honest. Now, I think Patrick Mahomes would have scrambled around, bought some time, created some throwing space, and then maybe found somebody else or found the same receiver somewhere else down the field. But as far as standing in with the rush and delivering the ball on time, fearless. C.J. Stroud is absolutely badass. I've got him number 3 on my list. for that reason. And if I did it over again, I'm glad he's 3 on yours, Jeff, because it makes me not feel bad about Sam having him 2.
Well, it's like Joe Burrow. It's like when you take over those kinds of teams. I can't say this enough. When you take over teams like that who've been losing they had 3 coaches 3 straight years. They had 11 wins in the 3 years before he showed up, and you're winning the division, you're winning a playoff game. Like, he changed the whole culture, with his presence. I mean, that you can't pay enough to get that kind of guy.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Tommy says I'm changing my mind. Like I said, I didn't not like him, and I said his game against Georgia was great, but I did hang the Ohio State quarterback thing on him. So I wouldn't take Bryce Young. I'd probably take C.J.Stroud, given that is my 2 choices. But no, absolutely not. I was not all over C.J.Stroud. I will not claim any kind of hype around him, and I did hang the Ohio State thing around him, and I was wrong. Don't draft helmets, draft players. And that was the lesson that certainly I learned, because I should have been bigger on C.J.Stroud for sure. Absolutely. All right, Sam, you're number 3.
I've got Josh Allen 3rd. Josh Allen's contract has become what everyone talks about Patrick Mahomes' contract in Kansas City, because he's now fallen outside the top 10 and paid quarterbacks, and I think he's the 2nd best guy in the league. He's also signed through his age 32 season, so it's not like there's a couple guys that were tough to decide on this list, because for this year it looks pretty good, but they're going to be up. And therefore their contract is really going to grow. But Josh Allen is outside the top 10 after that Trevor Lawrence deal, and his contract isn't up in the next couple of years. So they're going to have the ability, and obviously the player can demand some things the way that the Chiefs redid Patrick Mahomes' contract last September. But as of right now, that contract just looks really good for who I think is the 2nd best quarterback in the game.
I have no problem with Josh Allen. He's on my list. He hasn't come up yet, but we've only got a couple left. But yeah, Josh Allen's a stud, and he's the other big expensive guy. Well, he's one of the.
And the other thing is, like Jeff mentioned, Joe Burrow under this category of guys who scare the Chiefs, and look, I agree with that. I mean, before the Chiefs had ever faced Joe Burrow once, Steve Spagnuolo compared him to Tom Brady, and the whole room was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And Joe Burrow went out and beat him twice within like a 4-week span. Josh Allen scares the Chiefs too, because he's got a dual threat ability that, look, Lamar Jackson is dual threat, but there's always going to be the knock on his arm. With Josh Allen, the dual threat, there's no knock on either part of that game. And he's beaten the Chiefs multiple times, even though it hasn't come in the postseason. And that will make a difference, that the fact that it hasn't come in the postseason. But nobody's ever been closer and lost in that 13-second game. And they didn't lose that 13-second game because of Josh Allen. No. He brought them back twice in the last 3 minutes. I just think he's in that same, and like I said, Jeff made a good point with that Joe Burrow scaring the best team in football, but I think Josh Allen puts that same fear in him.
I agree with everything you said. I love Josh Allen. I've got him number 5. Since we're on him, I'll bring him up now. He's number 5 on my list. I'll get to who I have at number 4 here in a minute, but I think he's a stud. And watching him stand there on the sidelines in that 13-second game and the other games that he's lost, where he usually does his job, and then Patrick Mahomes goes out and gets it done. It's why Mahomes is better, because Mahomes is like, everybody thinks a quarterback can just take a team and a coach can just clock manage their way down to score with no time on the clock. It's not that easy. First, you have to score. Right? Every coach I've talked to is like, everybody completely belittles the part about scoring. They think, well, we'll score, but let's also make sure there's no time on the clock. The scoring is hard. And Josh Allen does the scoring. Maybe he'll evolve to where he can kind of burn some more time on the clock. I think Patrick Mahomes is really the only guy that can effectively do that. But watching Josh Allen sit there and see the Chiefs break his heart was the same thing as watching Tom Brady do it to Patrick Mahomes in 2018. Mahomes did everything he could. It was the rest of the team that let him down. And I'm with you. I think Josh Allen's going to win a championship. I think they may need to get a new head coach. That's an offensive coach, but I think a championship's coming.
Yeah, that's the only thing that separates, for me, and I know this sounds like blasphemy in this town, Patrick Mahomes from Josh Allen is the coaching. Like having Andy Reid throughout his entire career. And I like Sean McDermott, but when you have a defensive-minded coach, it limits what you can become as a quarterback. I think they're better off with Joe Brady, but they're on their 3rd OC in the last 3 years. And that's, to me, not a coincidence. It's
Oh.
Josh Allen needs to be coached by somebody in a lot of the same way we talked about John Elway in our previous podcast, that John Elway needed Mike Shanahan. Josh Allen needs that kind of coach.
Well, and at some point, the Buffalo Bills are going to have to do what the Denver Broncos did.
Yep.
Be like, Dan Reeves is not the guy. We got to go get Mike Shanahan back. That's why you hire an offensive coach. Because when you can marry him up to the quarterback, everything's solved. But if you hire a great offensive coach and he's the coordinator, he's gone to be a head coach the next year. Yep. And so it's why you can't play it that way. Do you have Josh Allen on your list, Jeff?
He's 5.
Yep. He's 5 on your list.
For all the reasons already mentioned.
So then let's get to number 4. Let's go with Sam, because we have 2 left that we don't have from Sam. So who's number 4 on your list, Sam?
Yeah, I've got Joe Burrow 4, just because I think there is a clear separator right now in the NFL with the top 3 quarterbacks. And therefore, I think they are worth the excess payment, even though, Burrow is tied at the top of the list. I agree with everything Jeff said about him. And look, I know you guys have Purdy, but I think you can drop Joe Burrow into any offense and he's Joe Burrow. I don't think you can drop Brock Purdy. And I understand there's a massive gap in payment. That's the reason you guys have him on the list and the reason we rank these by value. But I just don't think Brock Purdy's even himself, even his current version of Brock Purdy when you drop him in to a different offensive system. But I still think you get everything out of Joe Burrow anyway. And you mentioned about staying in there and taking a hit. Nobody does it like Joe Burrow. It's the reason he puts that fear into. It's the reason that Chris Jones couldn't sack him until that one AFC Championship game. I think Joe Burrow is a do anything it takes to win kind of player. And I realize that the record is what it is. That's the reason I have him 4th and not 2nd on the list. But there's like I said, there's a distinct to me. There's a first tier of quarterback, and there's only 2 guys in that second tier, and Joe Burrow's one of them.
I will say that Joe Burrow is eminently sackable, and it's why the Chris Jones thing was such a problem. 51 sacks to lead the league in 21. 41 sacks in 22. And then last year he was sacked 24 times in just 10 games. So Joe Burrow is very sackable. Tough, yes, he'll stand in there. But kind of like in our last podcast, I dinged Aaron Rodgers. I love his toughness, but there are some times to get rid of the ball. Joe Burrow needs to get rid of the ball more. So, but I don't have a problem with him being on this list. Again, it's not on my list.
He has been on really bad offensive line teams.
Yeah.
I do think it'd be interesting to look up.
How many free agents and how many draft picks do they have to take before it's not the offensive line?
Let me see where he was, Soren, last year on pressure to sack ratio, because I think that'd be interesting to look at.
Because there are a couple of guys, I'm trying to think of the guy. Who was it? The Denver Broncos. It was well, we got to get some weapons. You look at their drafts; they've drafted offensive lineman after offensive lineman.
Burrow is pretty high on that list, by the way. He's in the top 10 on the. I guess he's
good or bad top 10.
He's 16th among the top 41 attempts in the league, among having a high sack ratio among his pressures. Which, by the way, the lowest 3 guys on this list are Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Brock Purdy.
Yes.
But Soren, your point, it's legit. It's like Bruce Arians when he coached the Bucs. He wants to throw the football down the field, and he's willing to take the sacks and the interceptions that come with that. The Bengals have gotten off the slow starts the last couple of years because Joe Burrow wants to throw the football. He wants the big plays. He's hunting the big plays. He wants to get that going. And sometimes, as Mahomes had to learn, they don't give it to you. You got to play a different style of football.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to because the Broncos then how many wideouts had the Broncos taken? It's well, then none of them are any good. Okay, well, maybe the guy throwing the ball doesn't get rid of it and gets sacked, and then maybe the problem is the guy, and he can't get it near the receivers to catch it. I just want to look here. The Bengals this year drafted an offensive lineman in the 1st round, a wide receiver in the 3rd round, a tight end in the 4th, a tight end in the 6th. And a center in the 7th. The year before, they drafted a wide receiver in the 4th, running back, wide receiver. Jamar Chase is the number 5 overall pick in the draft at wide receiver. They have T. Higgins. I mean, they signed Orlando Brown. Like at some point, it's
They
him.
signed Trent Brown this year.
I mean, you were using
Trent
Orlando
Brown
Brown.
and drafted the 400-pound kid from
Alabama.
Alabama.
Georgia. Marius Mims, right? Georgia. Yeah.
Marius Mims. So, like, at some point, those fat asses, it ain't them.
Like I said, he does have a high pressure to sack ratio. I mean, it's too high. But I don't think any of us should be arguing that the Bengals have done enough with their offensive line just because they signed Orlando Brown in the offseason or I mean, the Bengals need to shore up their offensive line still.
But I agree. I'm not championing Orlando Brown, but I'm saying we've seen Orlando Brown play with Patrick Mahomes, and it's not 51 sacks.
Yep.
Okay, so
I mean, he's got almost double the pressure to sack ratio that Patrick Mahomes does.
And Marius Mims,
all three of those guys
is athletically more gifted than Joe Alt.
I mean,
so
it's
no more excuses.
It's a significant stat. Like there's a reason we're focused on this. When you look at the guys at the bottom of that list, Josh Allen, Mahomes, and Purdy, Flacco had a good year, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, like those are good quarterbacks. You look at the top of that list, DeVito, Daniel Jones, Ryan Tannehill, Bryce Young, Zappe, Zach Wilson, Garoppolo, Jake Browning, Sam Howell, Easton Stick, Desmond Ridder, Will Levis, Deshaun Watson. Like none of the great performing quarterbacks have a high pressure to sack ratio. Like it is a significant stat, and it's definitely a flaw in his game.
We're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they're not problems anymore. They've been making them go away since 1994. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot cuts down on accidents, problems in your lot, lets you focus on your business. It's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. All right, we've got number 4 for me, number 5 for Sam, and number 4 for Jeff. Jeff, you want to go with your number 4?
Brock Purdy.
Okay.
And, we've kind of made the argument already for him, but it's, I made the joke about Jason Bean of Kansas being above him. Shane Buechele's above him, Rocky Lombardi, Bailey Zappi, pretty much any practice squad, 4th-string quarterback you want to. I think Brock Purdy is like the 4th highest paid quarterback in the league right now. And so to have that and to be a Pro Bowl quarterback, to be a Super Bowl quarterback, NFC champion quarterback, I think it's time for people to accept he's a pretty good player. And the only reason he's not higher on this list, and Sam mentioned it, this is going to be the last year he's going to be paid that kind of money. He's eligible for an extension. He's going to be I don't know exactly where he's going to land, but he's going to have a pretty strong case to be exactly where Trevor Lawrence is. And so I think those days are going to be over pretty soon.
Okay. All right. Number 5 for you, Sam.
Yeah. So it's 5 for me. Purdy's does he just have 1 year left? I thought he had 2 years left on
he's eligible for an extension.
Yeah. Look, Purdy got a lot of consideration for me. I do agree with Jeff that he's going to be coming up soon. And like the length of time that these players have left on these current deals was a major factor for me. I'm going like really, really far off the board and saying that my 5th best value quarterback that I would take their contract would be Caleb Williams. Because I think I think a lot of teams would trade their current quarterback salary to get 5 years of rookie contract out of Caleb Williams. And for most years, a lot of the number 1 picks. To be honest, I think Jaden Daniels might fall into the top 10 or top 15 of this list for the same reason. I just think a lot of teams would any of us take Trevor Lawrence at $55 million over Caleb Williams, 5 years of not even being inside the top 20 of quarterback compensation? To me, that's a pretty easy comparison between those two guys. And I recognize that Caleb Williams is very far off the board, hasn't played it down. This could completely backfire, but I do think a lot of the NFL is risk-taking with quarterbacks on rookie deals, and that's a guy I would take the risk with.
I don't mind it. I looked at him and went, and maybe I didn't look at him long enough, and because I was like, well, he hadn't played, who knows where he's going to be, and still pricey amongst rookies, right? But not pricey for quarterbacks. I think it's a fine. If you believe in Caleb Williams, I don't see any problem with that one.
Yeah, I mean he's gonna make less money than Sam Darnold and Gardner Minshew this next year, to put in perspective of like the class of what he's gonna be paid.
Jeff, I thought you were going to say something. No.
No. I'm with. The only thing about it is the risk of whether he can play or not. That's
Yes.
To me. It's always until you actually see the guy out there doing it at this level. I know there's been a lot of hype, and it's a great situation in Chicago. It'd be hard to see him not playing decently, but I've seen guys come in here and lay eggs before in the past, so I'm a little bit reluctant to pick that one.
I think a year from now we may have Caleb Williams and Drake May. We may have Caleb Williams and Jalen Daniels. Like, those rookie contracts are the ones we're looking for, and they may bump a couple of guys off here. All right, my number 4 is Matt Stafford. 4 for 160. Maybe I hinted at that.
That might be changing soon.
It could, but listen, I think Matt Stafford has proven once he got out of the vile clutches of the Detroit Lions old regime that Matt Stafford can go. And I think also, when you see he's throwing a Puka Nacua, he's got all this talent. Like, come on. I mean, Matt Stafford's making that thing go. And you think about the Rams, what is now, 3 years ago. Think about the Rams last year, and then think about the year in between. And what's the difference? No Matt Stafford.
No.
So
right? It boggles my mind on how piss poor the Lions must have been all around him for all those years. And I think Sean McVay helps. There's no doubt about it. But I think Matt Stafford, listen, if Matt Stafford would win the Super Bowl this year, like his career also,
Hall of Fame.
He goes to the Hall of Fame for sure. Because if you look at the counting categories, he's way up there on all the lists. He's blowing by some of the biggest names in football. I mean, Matt Stafford is 11th all-time with passing yards, 56,000. Below him, John Elway, Warren Moon, Fran Tarkenton, Dan Fouts, John Unitas, Joe Montana. Like, the only people in front of him for passing yards going up are Eli Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, Roethlisberger, Favre, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, and Tom Brady. Like, if he's got a couple more years left in him, he's the only ones that are going to be in front of him are going to be like, the 70,000 club. Brady, Brees, Mahomes, or Brady, Brees, Manning, and Favre.
He could hit 70. I'm with you on that.
I will say that the thing about Stafford is there was a 4 for like 165 deal, but he only made like 20 last year. Like, he's got 3 for 150 left on that deal. So it's very backloaded. I'm curious though, Soren, because like you didn't put Joe Burrow on your list, right?
Right.
And like, to me, a lot of your criticism for Joe Burrow could also be said of Matt Stafford with the injury history, the losing record overall. He's only won playoff games in one season of his entire career. I'm curious how you debated between
he makes less.
Joe Burrow and Stafford.
I think they're very similar guys, but he makes less.
Okay.
So the value, it was about the value. I think you could flip-flop them on teams, and I don't think there'd be much difference. I think they're both really good. And maybe that's, I think for most people it'd be, oh, really, you got Matt Stafford up there? Well, Matt Stafford went to and won a Super Bowl and beat Joe Burrow.
See, I think the Bengals without Joe Burrow are the Lions without Matt Stafford. I think that he walks back into the team with a great number 1 wide receiver and not a whole lot else. And Joe Burrow took that team to a Super Bowl, and Matt Stafford didn't win a playoff game in Detroit.
You think Jamar Chase is just.
They had Calvin Johnson, like Matt Stafford threw to Calvin Johnson.
And they went up and down the field to the tune of almost 2,000 yards, setting NFL records. Matt Stafford threw for 5,000 yards. Matt Stafford threw for 40 touchdowns. I mean, what didn't Matt Stafford do with the line?
Dominic Assume was there too.
Well, listen. You said what? Just to clarify, you said what didn't he do? He didn't win a playoff game then. That's something he didn't do.
Fair, but like when you talk about, I mean, he had 5,000 yards his third year in the league, 49.67 the year after that, 46.50. He had 41 touchdowns his third year in the league. Like, and then he gets to the Rams. His first year with the Rams, 4,941.
So Matt Stafford, seasons of quarterbacking the Lions, offensive rank in terms of points was 27, 15, 4, 17, 13, 22, 18, 20, 7, 25, 18, and 20. I mean, it's 2 top 10 seasons in scoring.
It wasn't Matt Stafford's fault. What are Joe Burrow's offensive ranks? The Bengals.
I can look
They
it up.
weren't that
That's
high.
what I'm saying. Like I don't think. I don't know. I think we've got. I think that the Super Bowl is doing a lot of work, and a good way for Matt Stafford.
I think the Super Bowl is doing a lot of work for both of them. I think
that's fair. That's fair.
I think the comparison's great. It's just
but one guy has a shorter sample size to work with.
Shorter sample size and still theoretically a lot more ceiling left, and he got a Super Bowl early.
He's 29-7-7.
He lost. Remember, those don't count.
Yeah, it's yeah.
He's 29-7-7, and then last year they were 16th. I don't think they were even, to be honest, any worse with Jake Browning. So I wouldn't even put that all with the
Well, the first year he got hurt though.
Jake Browning was better. That was one of the career assassinations of Joe Burrow, was that the Bengals were better with Jake Browning.
They weren't better with Jake. Who wrote that?
I can't remember the guy. Steven was talking about it on the morning show and rattled off all the stuff the guy had. And it was compelling. Like, it was well done.
Well, he didn't beat the Chiefs. Jake Browning didn't beat the Chiefs.
He did not. He did not. Neither did Joe Burrow last year. So he couldn't play.
Yeah.
Part of the equation as well. All right. Who just missed? Anyone that just missed?
Jordan Love for me.
Yeah.
A just miss. Matthew Stafford was a just miss. And Aaron
Rodgers.
Rodgers.
If Jordan Love's not expiring, then we all have him on our list.
I think Jordan Love. I think Tua as well. Tua. I mean, he's got great talent, but he played.
He's about to get paid. Like I don't want that.
Paid, yeah.
I don't want that current Tua contract compared to the guys I put on my list. I had Brock Purdy on my list before I switched out with Caleb Williams. Honestly, I had Lamar Jackson too. I gave a lot of thought to Lamar Jackson because I think he's the fourth best quarterback. And he had the best passing season of his career last year. That was the knock on him. He made 25 big time throws, according to Pro Football Focus, top 5 in the league. Like, he threw the ball last year. Once they gave him, a first round draft pick that could actually play, they actually hit on one of these first round draft pick wide receivers. They signed Odell Beckham. They finally had some receivers, and I thought his passing game looked like it, but look, if Lamar Jackson had beaten the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, he'd be on all of our lists. There's a gaping hole in his resume. We all know what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, remember, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. And, of course, Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, helping people with serious injuries. Car accidents, work accidents, falls, other serious ones. If you've got a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878 right now. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, Sam McDowell, the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold.